Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast.
Hey guys, we're doing a special After Dark episode. We're going to do Star Trek inspired taste testing. Before we continue, you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as The Fire Caves.
And tonight we're being joined by Ben O, the host of his own podcast, the Traveling Dawn. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Entirely up. Hey, we're live. That's what we are going to just roll with it this time. And he's going to join us as we do this taste testing. And of course, he's going to give his own perspective on the foods while we talk about the various cultures and lore that they come from when it comes to Star Trek. Also, we're going to provide you with the information for where we got all these recipes, and of course, tell you where you can find some of the alcohols that we are going to be sampling today. Now, before we get started, I would like to give Ben the chance to fully talk about his blog and how to access it.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it. So my name is Ben Schmino. I am the creator of the Adventures of a Traveling Dawn YouTube channel. So it's pretty much all YouTube. I do have other things like Patreon, working on a Medium stuff for kind of stories. But for right now, it's just the Adventures of a Traveling Dawn YouTube channel. And it's basically, I travel across the world, throughout the states, wherever I'm going, whether it's for a seasonal job or just when I have like 2 months of downtime. I go travel, kind of showcase places to see. The last big trip I did was, of course, in Greece, the Balkans, and Bermuda. So a lot of different places, and there will be many, many more to come going forward.
And today we're on location at the Wine Sensation Bar located in Georgetown, Texas. If you're ever in the area, please feel free to stop by. You can find the address, of course, by a simple Google search. So I encourage you all to do so, where you won't find any of the alcohols that we'll be trying today on the menu, but there are several other wines and things like that that you can try out, along with pretty expansive food menus that you can also sample from. So be sure to stop in and tell them that the Fire Cave sent you. Now, as I said, we are going to be talking about the different food from Star Trek. A lot of these items were featured across the probably better known franchises, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. Of course, since we are a Deep Space Nine-centric show, we had to pick things that were going to be featured from there. So we're going to be kicking that off with the item that you see right here in front of you, which is Hasperat. The recipe for the Hasperat came from the official Star Trek cookbook. This came out about 2 years ago. You can find it on Amazon or pretty much anywhere that you order books. I believe it's about $20. And again, it's got a lot of different recipes from across Star Trek, a lot of different culturally inspired things. There's Romulan breads, there's Klingon food items like one that we're going to be trying later on today. There's also several different menu items from the Federation as well. So go ahead and check that out whenever you get the chance. And again, we're going to make several references to this book throughout today. All right. So let's get started with our first item. I guess we're going to do the Hasperat first.
Awesome.
Now, as I said, the Hasperat is a wrap. It's supposed to be a spicy veggie wrap. We'll just keep passing that along.
Thank you very much.
So this was one that, again, got the recipe from this book. I made this one, and hopefully everybody enjoys it. If you don't enjoy it, it's not my fault. It's the Bajorans. So remember, if you are spitting on the food, you're spitting on a culture that was oppressed for 50 years. So.
I'm nervous now. Oh, Jesus. All right.
It smells delicious, by the way, I have to say.
I like that.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I really, really like that.
She said this is a completely veggie-inspired dish. There's no...
That's correct. There are no meats in it whatsoever. So the story of Hasperat is basically that, like I said, the Bajorans were a culturally oppressed people by the Cardassians when they invaded their planet. And obviously, when you are the slaves to another culture, another race, you're not really getting the top choice in foods. So they were basically left with just whatever vegetables they could scrounge together to survive off of. So Hasperat became a way of utilizing vegetables, in particular by pickling them, which also with the fermentation added a lot of spice to the meal. The spice became quite important with families having different recipes to make their pickling brine. And if you could make a particularly spicy brine, you were considered quite skilled at making hasbrat. So it is a spicy veggie dish. I feel like it's a great option for a lot of people, whether you're vegetarian or not. It's got a great taste to it, and it's fairly simple to make. And the beauty of it is you can pretty much use any vegetables that you want. So I suggest you check it out.
Now, sorry, but go
I was
ahead.
going to say, we're on the same wavelength there.
Excuse me, I'm hot today. So.
What's in this here?
So for this recipe, I used butternut squash, onions, roasted red peppers, and mushrooms. The spicy brine paste that I used to put it all together is a mixture of kimchi and cream cheese and a sour cream and sour cream and onion dip. So I mixed them all together, added a little bit of sriracha as well for a little extra kick, and then wrapped it all up.
Love the spice on it. Very nice.
Yeah, still very fresh and delicious. What I was going to say was the episode that I first remember hearing about Hasbrat, or Hasbrat, if I just misspoken, was the TNG episode where Ensign Rowe has now become Lieutenant Rowe, the penultimate episode of TNG. I forget the name of that episode at the moment, Perry, you probably remember.
I don't. Sorry.
But anyway, Ensign Rowe, now Lieutenant Rowe, has been tasked by the Federation to infiltrate the Maquis in order to kind of have an inside woman, if you will. And one of the things she encounters is a man who can make authentic Hasbrat. And she is so kind of overwhelmed by the nostalgia of it as someone who's been away from her culture for a long time. And it really stood out in that episode. That was a touch point for her and her memories. So it really stood out in that episode as some of this meal. What is this? So it's really fun to get a chance to kind of take something that you imagine coming from a fictional place, but pretty good anyway. So.
And also in that episode, the whole issue with the Hasbrat was that it was a draw for her to eventually begin sympathizing with the Maquis, which eventually led to her leaving Starfleet at the end of that episode and joining the Maquis. It also was the jumping off point for the introduction of the group, the Maquis, which became a major part of the Federation development. We see them again in Deep Space Nine, and of course they are prominently featured in Star Trek Voyager, where half the crew is made up by ex-Maquis members. So very important dish for the Bajoran people and then for Star Trek in general. One of the few times where they give you more of a cultural touchstone, which we don't really see in a whole lot of the alien races that are featured in Trek. So
I was kind of curious. I was like, I didn't realize something, because for you guys, you guys here for the Star Trek podcast. I had only really watched a little bit when I was younger. Next Generations, I've got kid memories from that. A little bit of Deep Space Nine and maybe some Voyager as well. Never watched the original series. I think I watched the Wrath of Khan movie once. My dad had me watch when I was a kid. My biggest memories really is the newest movies when it comes to that.
The
J.J.
universe,
with J.J. Abrams. But it is fascinating for me, just in general, whether it's Star Trek or any kind of movies, how food can be such a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And and Star Trek has used food several times to highlight cultural differences. In particular, they've done it with Klingon food, which is probably one of the more expansive cultures that have come out of development in Trek. A lot of times when they're trying to highlight cultural significance or cultural difference, it's through food, and you will see Klingons come on board like the Enterprise or the station or the space station or whatever, and they'll order something that is just so bizarre and off the wall that it just it pales in comparison to anything that we would ever consider eating.
Yeah, looks like live worms.
Yeah, that's gok. Now there are recipes for a lot of those things in this cookbook. I did not like the gok recipe that they had, so I didn't make it. That's why it's not being featured here. So if you're looking for it, just get this book. You can decide for yourself if you want to make it. There was another cookbook that came out maybe, I want to say maybe 20 years ago that had Neelix from Star Trek Voyager. And he also had a gok recipe, but it was disgusting. to say the least. So again, after looking it up in 2 different books, I just decided not to do it. So, but if you're interested, again, go check it out. Now, the next thing that we're going to try, since we just went with spicy, thought we could cool things down a bit with a drink, and that will be what's featured here, this nice blue-looking glass here, which is Romulan Ale. And this is another recipe that came out of this book. Really quick, again, I keep talking about the book, so I thought it would be important to notice this book not only gives you recipes, but it also gives you menu selections too. So if you're not really sure what to make, there's a whole section in the back of the book that tells you how to pair it. Like if you want to do a buffet, if you're just looking for a general meal for your home, if you're doing something special or elaborate or anything like that, you've got all of those here as well. This recipe comes out of one of those sections, so we're going to give that a try next. Also, really quick, there is a website that makes their own and bottles their own Romulan ale. It's called Star Trek Spirits, and if you want to get that version, you can order directly from them. It's about $60 a bottle, so you can either make your own or you can have someone else do it for you. All right.
So what do we got here?
This is the Romulan ale, chilled. So I like this.
Sweet.
Yeah. Okay, speak
Touch
of
a turn.
I've had the one from the website. This one's better.
Actually, very refreshing.
Not too strong.
Yeah.
In Star Trek, whenever they show people drinking this one, it's one that everyone seems to enjoy, but then regret later. So I don't know if that's going to happen for us today. I'm certainly not going to try to get intoxicated while we're doing the show or anything like that. But definitely a nice drink for what we're getting out of this book here. What are you guys' thoughts?
I like it. It's fruity, particularly we're inside right now, but like if we were sitting outside here in Texas, it's already 86, 89 degrees.
Yeah.
I'm like forever hot, so
this would be perfect sitting outside.
Yeah. I don't myself drink, so I'm not someone who regularly partakes, but yeah, this is a drink that, someone who doesn't drink, like very easily enjoyable. That fruity flavor, that sweetness is very, very light. I can see why someone might regret drinking this because they very easily drink too much.
Yeah, maybe that's why there's a regret. Yeah, because you drink too much and then you're over. So now, Romulan ale has been featured a lot in Star Trek, even going all the way back to the original series with Kirk and Spock and all those guys. It's featured in several of the movies. In particular, Dr. McCoy brings a bottle as a gift to Kirk for his birthday at the beginning of Star Trek 3. The Search for Spock. And then we see it again in Star Trek 6. We see it several times on Next Generation. I don't know if we actually ever see it on Deep Space Nine, but then they bring it up again on Voyager. So all the shows at some point have touched on this particular drink.
Now, do they ever show in Star Trek in any of the episodes? I know in the movies, at least the newest movies, you see it a couple times, where they're drunk.
A couple of the episodes, people have been drunk. I know in the original series, Scotty famously drank an alien who had taken over the ship under the table as a way of getting control of the Enterprise back.
Yeah.
Next Generation, again, it was Scotty who got drunk when he was a guest on the show. But by Next Generation, the whole point was that alcohol was now called synthale, and it was allowing you to have all of the taste and enjoyment, but none of the deleterious effects of alcohol. Which, you know what? If you don't have those, why drink? So I don't really know the point of that.
It's funny we're talking about that scene because recently, just scrolling YouTube, that was suggested to me, and Data is the one who says, we know that there's a bottle of some real alcohol behind the bar. And he goes back there and he tries to figure out what it is, and all I can say is it's green.
Which was actually a callback to the episode where Scotty drank the alien under the table, because the alien comes to Scotty's quarters in an attempt to, just kind of experience human culture. And one of those things that they're doing is drinking. And Scotty has a bunch of different alcohols that he has hidden away in his quarters. And the alien drinks all of them and never succumbs until he breaks out a dusty old green bottle, to which the alien asks, "What is it?" He says, "It's green." And then they drink it and he wins. He wins drinking contest.
Gotcha.
So, and it's not until the episode with Scotty on Next Generation, which is called Relics, by the way, that we finally get a name for the infamous green alcohol, because he's drinking it later on in the holodeck when he's joined by Captain Picard, who downs a glass and immediately identifies it for us as Aldebaran whiskey. He's the only one who knew what it was.
Gotcha.
So, now, there is no Aldebaran whiskey recipe in this book, unfortunately. Although I'm sure if you scour online somewhere, someone has come up with something that would work for it.
It's just what would be a green whiskey, right? So
in theory, it's the color of it it's a very light green kind of, but it's a cloudy liquid. So you'd have to really work at it to get that kind of consistency to work. And who knows what they might have added into it to make it, whatever. But Picard really seemed to enjoy it, and so did Scotty, of course. So can't get better than that when it comes to high praise, I think.
Nice. That was good.
So now we're going to move more into our, I guess, rustic fare. Yeah. The next thing that we're going to try is what did we say was going to be next? I forgot.
We're going to do
the meat.
Yeah.
Yes, the Linkta.
Okay.
So this is the Linkta roast, which I already have portioned up for us here, so you didn't get to see it. And with that, this one is one that was featured exclusively on Deep Space Nine. The story for Linkta is that in Klingon culture, whenever when a man is pursuing a woman and he wants to declare how much he wants her and supports her, when he comes to her home for the first time, she will have already prepared an elaborate meal for them. And he is to bring in a leg of the Linkta meat, which is off of a heretofore unseen quadruped animal of some kind, use the leg to sweep everything else off the table and proudly declare that the Linkta is what they're going to eat, because he now wants to provide for her family from here on out. So then, of course, they promptly make and consume said meat, which, from the only description that we've ever had for it on the show, was from Quark, who said it tasted really bad. Now, I'm following a recipe. I'm hoping that it does not taste bad. Everything that it did call for, I found appealing on its own. So we're going to try it and see.
Well, it doesn't smell bad, that's for sure.
So I'll let y'all go first so you can tell me, because I was the cook, so I kind of already know. I have an idea of what it's going to taste like.
Well, it looks like it's a beef dish with the orange sauce of some kind.
I was curious about it because when it was whole before we sliced it up, it almost looked like one big fat slug. And I was like, because with all the juices and everything, I was like, what is that?
Very dark, a giant slug. Yeah. That's delicious.
Oh, that's actually very good.
No.
So what cut of meat did you use for this one?
So it's actually a pork tenderloin.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
I marinated it overnight, and there's a recipe for the marinade again in this book. Calls for you to, after you take it out of the marinade, you make several slits in it, and then you take a Bartlett pear, put slices of the pear in between in those little slits you made the meat. It's a slow cook. It took about an hour and a half to do at the temperature suggested in the book. And then there is a recipe for the marinade to turn it into a sauce that goes over it, which is a white wine and miso paste based. And then that's it. So I think it worked out very well.
Oh, yeah, that's very tender. Great job. And it makes more sense to hear you say it was a pork tenderloin. When we originally saw the food as Perry had prepared it before we put it on the plates, yeah, that was a pork tenderloin. So that's my mistake. But yeah, you said figs, correct?
Bartlett pears.
Pears, maybe. Pears. Yeah, pears nicely. There's a pun for you. With the meat. But yeah, really tender. Really well done.
And so this is what it looks like in the book, of course. Here's the main page. Again, you can't really see from there. But if you get the book, you'll be able to tell exactly what it was that we featured here. But yeah, I think that it turned out pretty well. It's actually featured on the cover of the book as well. So yeah, definitely go and check that one out. This is one I will definitely make again. I really liked the way that it tasted. I thought about other equivalents of meats that you could do for this, and considering like if you really wanted to go like authentic with like matching the Klingon story and bringing in a whole leg of something, only thing I could think of that would really work would be like a leg of lamb that you could then serve up. But lamb tends to be a rather gamey meat, so unless you have a lot of experience with it or know someone who has a lot of experience with it, I would not suggest making that as your first attempt. Maybe stick with pork or try it with beef if you want to, and go from there. The book does contain 2 different recipes for the base that you can put on it. One is a bit more savory, which may work with beef if you decide to go that route. So yeah, give it a shot and just see how that works for you.
I think also because just looking at how they picture it in the book, almost like you could use that as almost like a Christmas.
Yeah.
If you want to make a Star Trek Christmas or something like that, that'd be a great centerpiece right there.
That'd be a great idea. A lot of the recipes that are in there, they have a lot of very colorful things that I think would work for that as well. A themed holiday, make it something different than we all have kind of traditional food that we have around the holidays. So yeah, maybe breaking that up and giving yourself something a little bit different to try would be a welcome hit for you. And again, we found out it tastes pretty good. So you're, secure in a couple of ways there. Now, the Klingon culture is one that has probably I would say, longest history, if not the longest with Trek. They've been featured since the original series. They've had a massive overhaul in some of the newer Trek, much to the dismay of a lot of long-term fans. But considering all that, this is really one of the only other options for food that we ever really see. Gawk is normally the one that we see the most, and then there's like a smattering of like drinks like the blood wine, but for the most part, we don't really see other actual food items. So I was glad they actually included that recipe here in the book.
Now, when it comes to like when they're on mission, they're on the Enterprise or wherever, what do they actually eat on the ship? Is that ever talked about? Is it just like space capsules or?
No, it seems like everybody they kind of stick to what they know for themselves culturally.
Okay.
They have replicators on the ship, so it can pretty much make anything that you want.
Yeah, it's a machine where you talk to it, you say, give me a bowl of ice cream, and a bowl of ice cream just appears. Or give me some blood wine, and a flagon of blood wine. Well, I guess that's probably an exception in some ways, but you can literally just have food ready to go, prepared for you. It's actually a unique feature to cook your own food, which is actually something that the show, Brave New World's captain, who's that, the captain of
Captain Pike, played by Anson Mount.
I understand that his character, he makes his own food. He likes to cook.
Yeah, that and that whole cooking trope is one that I kind of have an issue with, because as a way to show that people have some extra spark of humanity, they want to throw cooking in there as their skill set. And it's been debated a few times now that Pike has been included in this list of captains who can cook. Who would be better, him or Sisko? Yeah. I refuse to believe that anybody would beat Sisko in the kitchen. I absolutely refuse to believe it. The man was raised by his chef father, worked in his kitchen for several years before, going off to the academy and everything else, and continues to cook to this day. There's no way that Mr. woke up on a Saturday and made pancakes and now I'm a chef is gonna beat him in my book. So, but yeah, that's one that we see featured a lot. But the replicator does provide the majority of the food. It's just basically repurposed matter, and it doesn't seem like it has much success in the way of replicating something with a truly capturing the taste. One of the main complaints we see about replicated food is that it doesn't taste quite right. It's not all the way there. It satisfies the nutritional requirement, but when it comes to taste,
I was wondering if it was able to actually bring in the actual nutrients of the food. You're getting, you say replicate me an orange, and you actually get all the vitamin C.
Yeah, that's what it's supposed to be. It handles. It's more prioritizing the nutritional component of the food versus the taste, which again, a lot of people object to in the show frequently, which leads to people who make their own food, grow their own stuff. Now in Voyager, because they're a ship far away from home and resupply and other resources, they're put on emergency rations. So they have to ration their replicator allotment and using Starfleet rations to make up the rest, which are even worse apparently when it comes to taste. So
Well, if they're anything like MREs.
yeah.
Is their whole character devoted to the idea that he's now the ship cook?
Yes, that's Neelix. He's the character that I have the most problem with. Because everyone's from the Alpha Quadrant. You pick the one guy from the Delta Quadrant who knows nothing about any of your dietary requirements and make him your chef. And then, of course, when they have food issues, it's because you suck, not him. That's kind of like the whole thing. I never understood that. You made the most alien person responsible for your digestive system. That's crazy to me. So, and he has hair. He's furry. His hair is in all your food. So, no, I would never be able to eat anything that Neelix cooked. I would run out of rations within a month. Absolutely. Well, I think that's going to actually do it for main course food items for us. We did have one dessert that we're going to try along with 2 more drinks. I think that we're going to go with the food and drink next, right?
Well, the other drink, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So this one is one that is not featured in the cookbook. This is a gin that you can get from the Star Trek Spirits website. They have a lot of different wines and alcohols that you can get there. This one was featured for the anniversary of Star Trek Picard. This is from, it's the Earl Grey gin, which we all know Picard famously drinks Earl Grey tea. So this is a gin that's infused with the tea. Then they just cleared it out with the distillation. So you have a really nice, fragrant gin that you can drink. They recommend that you can have it as shots, or you can add it into a drink like a gin and tonic, which is what we're doing here. And then there's a couple of other things along with the history of Earl Grey and Earl Grey gin, and it's featured in Trek all on the bottle. So if you have any interest at all, I would suggest going to that site. Again, it's StarTrekSpirits.com. It links into the other one, which is, again, StarTrekWines.com. So we're going to try those, and here we go.
Got a punch there.
Yeah, definitely very strong.
That's nice.
I do love the way that it smells. It's got a very floral, fragrant, I don't know what you want to call that, bouquet, I guess, but it definitely has the hint of Earl Grey. If you've ever had Earl Grey tea, it definitely tastes like that. But then there's that extra kick at the end there.
It's not super piney at all. So that's actually something that I really like. It's not piney. You do get that Earl Grey. I also get a little touch of maybe a little bit of melon sweetness on the back end. And a little almost like citrus too. That I
get more of the citrus part of it than anything else.
That's actually really nice.
Yeah, that's good. I would like to on the website. They also list several different cocktails you can make with pretty much any of the spirits that they sell. I might go back and look some of those up and try a few of those with this. But yeah, that's actually really nice.
Yeah, definitely a little bit on the sweet side, but not like that first drink. But yeah, that punch at the end. I mean, again, I don't drink much myself, so taking a sip and then woo, okay, going down the throat.
So this is Picard's drink of choice.
So Picard drinks wine. He owns a winery, which now has become a little bit of a joke. So apparently he is not that great of a winemaker. In fact, Worf called his wine a sour mead. So this is something that they just kind of did as a way to expand the base a bit for fans, because not everybody wants to drink wine and stuff like that. So they gave you something else that you could have that also worked with a tie-in to the show. I really like the bottle designs that you can get from the site, including this metal attachment here, which you can actually buy these individually and put them on anything that you want. Just obviously for copyright purposes, don't try to resell it when you put it on any bottle that you own. Yeah, it's really nice, and everything that I found on there has been relatively inexpensive. This was about $45, as a matter of fact. So you're paying more for the look, I think, than anything else. But hey, it works for you if you're a fan.
So been on TNG, Picard has what's called the Ready Room. It's his
Uh-huh.
private space. And it's very common for him to walk in there either by himself or with someone else. The first thing he goes up to his replicator and says, "Earl Grey tea hot."
Yeah.
So very common thing for him to
I'm curious.
have.
Did they do that, particularly like in the very first episode of the new Picard show, like as a throwback?
You don't hear him order it, but you see it provided for him in one of the very first episodes of Star Trek Picard. So it's kind of like the mainstay is that he's still drinking this tea after all these years, because in Picard, he's now retired
Yeah.
and living on the winery, which is now being tended to by a bunch of Romulans. So you have to kind of watch it to figure out why they're there. But it's a different kind of show. Star Trek Picard was met with mixed reviews. Probably didn't have its greatest success until season 3, which was the final season of that show. And it kind of moves on from there with the potential of a few different kinds of spin-offs from the show. So hopefully we'll get one of those, but right now it's not really seeming like it's going to happen. So we'll see.
And so Picard is part of the original timeline, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That was one of the things that they wanted to make sure everybody recognized about Picard is that it takes place 30 years after Next Generation ended. It has none of the influence of the Kelvin timeline or any of that other stuff.
So the Star Trek movies that JJ was produced is called the Kelvin timeline.
And so that's just its own specific timeline.
Right.
Everything
Yes.
else is the original timeline.
Yes.
Effectively. Okay. Though I understand the Discovery is now considered to be a part of the Kelvin timeline. Is that accurate?
I don't think so.
Am
Cause,
I wrong? Okay, don't listen
Yes.
to me. I'm not the expert.
Because the movies take place shortly after they graduated from the academy, and then Discovery takes place a little bit after. Yeah, actually, so I think you're right. I think they would be a part of the Kelvin universe, then, the way that timeline is set. But yeah, but then they jump ahead for like 1,000 years, so it kind of makes it not worth it. So there's some issues with Discovery. I liked Discovery, but it still has its problems.
Now, is the timeline set up where it's like the original series is the beginning, or is there actually series that have been created since that actually are like, almost like prequels? Almost like
Yes,
that's what they did
there
with
is.
like Star Wars.
Yes,
Like
there is one. The show Enterprise is the prequel to the original series. It's set about 100 to 120 years before Kirk and Spock and all of them popped up. So you're looking at humans right before the Federation is formed. Starfleet is in its infancy, and the very first starship to carry the name Enterprise is launched under Captain Jonathan Archer. So that show ran for 4 seasons. Should have got 5, but Paramount was going through some crazy things, let's just say, and it didn't really sell it. Didn't really get there. There have been proposals to bring it back. There have been some continuations in novelization and graphic novels, but so far nothing live action, nothing on the screen. Although Strange New Worlds, they have been rumored that they're going to do some, I guess, like flashback episodes where it may feature some of that stuff again. So we'll see.
It's fun. So I, as a fiction aficionado, like to have a very strict time travel sort of interpretation. Like the timeline should still make sense. You shouldn't just go back and Back to the Future everything.
Yeah.
But it's funny because Star Trek has a kind of loose interpretation of time travel sometimes, and they'll have some episodes where the rules kind of seem to be one way, and other episodes where they're kind of different. So, for example, the history, like modern histories, we would consider here in 2025.
Yeah.
Well, that would be like the late 90s and the early 2000s. There are episodes that kind of refer to those time periods.
Mhm.
And for example, there is an episode on Deep Space Nine where Cisco and one of the other characters, Bashir, they go back in time to write about now, and they actually have to participate in history because their very presence changed history, and that causes some shenanigans. And so history is kind of fluid in some aspects.
What if it's real and they're here now?
That would be.
So that's one of the favorite things for hardcore fans to do, is to figure out how we can retcon all the things in to make them work. And the episode he's talking about is called Past Tense, and it's Bashir, Cisco, and Dax are all thrown back in time, and it's during this time of political and social upheaval. Towns have been broken up into sanctuary districts, and you've got people of all demographics on one side or the other. In fact, in the episode, Dax gets separated from them, and she's on, I guess, the more affluent side of things, whereas Cisco and Bashir are trapped on this other side, and end up taking part in what are later termed the Bell Riots, because Cisco accidentally interferes and causes the death of a man named Gabriel Bell, and then he ends up taking on the persona of Gabriel Bell to continue or attempt to preserve the timeline of the Bell Riots. Yeah. It's an interesting episode to watch, because obviously there are things that didn't happen really in our timeline, but there are also a lot of things that ended up actually transpiring. So it's weird to watch and try to, again, piece it together. And then Picard attempts to explain some of the differences in the timeline, and they just really kind of like shift the time. So instead of this thing happening in, like, say, 96 or 2021 or whatever it is, they've kind of been like, well, it was really like 2065 or, something like that. So they do play fast and loose with the timeline, but it's kind of, par for the course. No one really expected a lot of these things when they were filming them to stick around and have the lasting power that they've obviously achieved. And so now you're going to have to fix your issues. But, I mean, the show's been on for nearly 60 years, so of course that's going to happen.
One of the fun episodes on Deep Space Nine, these two guys from the Time Space Authority, is that what it's called? They show up.
The temporal agency. Starfleet has its own goon squad, basically, who is out there to protect the timeline. The temporal agents.
Is this like the Marvel one as well that recently came out with the
I would say that you could see some parallels there. But the fun thing is, like, these two guys show up, they're mad at our main cast because they have gone on time travel shenanigans, and they need to figure out what happened.
And try to figure out, have you really impacted the timeline or not, and all that kind of stuff. But it is a fun episode. It was actually the 25th anniversary episode of Star Trek, and it was a Tribble-esque episode. So the crew goes back. So the famous Trouble with Tribbles episode from the original series, they kind of do their updated version for Deep Space Nine. Yeah. It's a great episode. It's a lot of fun to watch. The filming that they did to loop the old cast or the new casting with the old cast, all that's really cool to watch, and it still holds up. Unfortunately, there won't be a remaster of Deep Space Nine, which would make it even better. But take what you get, and it's still great to watch.
Yeah, they were great when they came out in like the 90s, and early 2000s.
Yes, the show ran from 94 to, I think that was 99. I think. So yeah. Yeah. So go and watch it. We say that all the time. Go and watch it. The show's 30 years old. You can find it on Paramount Plus. All the tracks you can find on Paramount Plus. Go and watch them. So I think that's going to do it for us on this drink. We now have one more food item, and then we have one more drink item. And so since we've already done our savory kind of entrees, we're now going to move into desserts here. And this one, again, comes straight from the book. And this is the Viola Root tart. Now, if you've watched any of Star Trek Voyager, you will know that our resident alien chef, Neelix, has an obsession with Viola Root, much to the dismay of the crew. Apparently that it smells awful, tastes even worse, but it's nutrient dense. So he keeps trying to use it because, again, they can get the most benefit from it. He makes several different things with it, from soups and stews to various vegetable medleys, so forth and so on. It comes up a lot, and I have yet to see them make anything that anybody enjoyed that feature Leola root. So again, it makes me wonder, why would you put this guy in charge of your food when he doesn't have any of your cultural references or taste histories or anything like that?
So you are now serving us a dish that was intentionally disliked on the very show.
Well, I felt like if we were going to do anything that had Voyager in it, it should be this, since Voyager is the kind of supposed to be billed as a return to grace of TNG and everything else. So
I actually haven't gotten any bloody slugs. So.
Yeah, try to stay away from anything too personal.
I understand that Jonathan, the one who's been serving us these dishes today off screen, he's the one who created this for us. Is that right?
Yes, Jonathan copied the recipe out of the book, and then he set to the task of making it. So if you don't like it, it's not my fault.
This is on you, Jay, just so you know.
That's what I get to say. All right, so he's already portioned this up for us.
Looks great.
We're going to give it a try.
You said it was gingery. It's gingery, all right.
There's a lot of ginger in there.
But I like ginger, so this works for me.
This actually, with all that ginger in there, if you had like a big party meal or something like that, this might actually be a good, like a small piece of this would be good at the end of that to help with the digestion.
Yeah.
And it's crunchy. I like that.
Crunchy, mildly sweet. Almost has a shortbread taste to me as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just it's a little bit crunchier than traditional Irish.
Yeah,
shortbread.
this isn't like a cookie. This is
It's
not.
very, very nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
They need to put these in
Man, it
back.
kind of goes well with the gin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, the
All
ginger
this-
with the Earl Grey.
yeah. All this works for me. I can handle this. Not too sweet. Got a nice crunch to it. Yeah, I could do this. I'd make it again.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we don't actually have Leola root. I believe the ginger is taking the place of Leola root in this recipe. I did not actually read this one. This is one of those situations where I was definitely eating with my eyes. I saw the picture in the book. I thought it looked great. And Jonathan was right there. And I said, hey, why don't you make this one? And he went with it. So I'm glad because it actually turned out well.
Yeah, nice little dessert.
I'm glad that they didn't actually go with the theme of the actual thing, because you said it was smelly in the actual show and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Just imagine if they'd used, like, instead of ginger, which doesn't really smell of it, even as the root, if they had used like dragon fruit, or if they used, what's the one that's really bad? Durian.
Oh my God.
Could you imagine if this was made with durian?
I would never have suggested that. I'll be honest with you. I've been to a couple of places where they have served it and
It's
just
so
yeah,
bad.
it's awful. And so many times I've talked to people and they've just been like, well, you got to get the right kind, because apparently there's different varieties that don't smell as bad. I've never encountered durian fruit that didn't smell.
Even smelling
horrible.
half as bad is still
Yeah.
bad.
It's awful. I don't know how people do it. So no. But yeah, in the episode of Voyager where we first encounter Leola root, they're digging it up, and Neelix makes the comment of part of the preparation is you have to boil it for several hours to diminish the taste of the mildew that apparently grows in and around said root. So once again, doesn't do anything to sell me on why this guy should be making their food. But
So unclean shower smell is just
yes.
a start.
So I don't know what you would. I mean, durian is a great option, I guess, if you're trying to go with something that is closer to the reaction that everybody seems to have when they encounter Leola root. But I don't know why on earth you would ever want to do that. So if you do it, do me a favor. Don't tell me about it. I don't want to know.
Oh,
So any other thoughts on the Leola root tart?
I think it was a very, very good pastry. It's really nice.
All right, Jonathan. Well, you passed muster on this one. We'll give you. We'll tentatively let you cook for us again in the future. So just keep that in mind. So now we have our final item for tasting. It is another drink. It is a recipe that again came out of this book. It is the Klingon blood wine, probably the most popular drink that is ever featured in Star Trek. Okay, so there are a lot, and I mean a lot of recipes that tell you how to make your own blood wine. The site that I told you about, Star Trek Wines, they sell their own blood wine as well that you can get. It comes in a very elaborate bottle. I did try to order one to have for us today to at least do a taste comparison, but it was not going to get here in time at all. So I just went ahead and did the recipe as found in this book. It calls for a blend of a bunch of different types of juices, and then a nice bold red wine as well, and then a couple of other spirits to go in it as well. So while I made it, I did not taste it, but when I was making it, you have to eat everything up and mixing everything else. I love the smell of it. I thought it smelled fantastic. So I'm eager to try it. The book calls for it to be served warm because, again, it's blood wine, so they kind of want you to do that. But it does say you can serve it at room temperature, or I thought chilled, considering some of the ingredients that are in it. So we're going to give it a shot and see what you think. I already like the color.
Yeah, looks like some sort of blood of some level. Very cinnamony. Is that cinnamon I'm tasting?
You know what this is? This is Christmas wine.
That's what I thought when I was smelling it.
Yeah.
It reminded me of Christmas.
This is when I've gone to, and you guys, if you ever watch the channel, you can go back to some of the earlier videos I've done where I've been to, Eastern France, Western Germany for Christmas. This is when you go to one of those Christmas markets, Kindle markets, and you get the hot wine.
Yeah, don't they call that mulled wine?
Mulled wine,
Yeah.
The hot mulled wine that you get when you're at one of those Christmas markets. I can see why they would say it'd be warm. This is basically, with the cinnamon, a little bit of clove.
Yeah.
Clove, yeah.
That'd be good.
And of course, the aroma on that's like a little bit of honey. That's a little bit of.
So I will tell you, there's no honey in this. The recipe does not call for it. But you know what? I
get
can
the
see
aroma.
adding that. That actually tasted really good to me. I was anticipating it to be bad. I'll admit. I mean, it's called blood wine. I'm not really, but it actually tastes really good. I finished mine, obviously.
It's also, it's a sweeter flavor than I would expect a Klingon to enjoy.
Well, so we do have a hint about the taste palette because in one episode of Deep Space Nine, when we just watched it, Lies, Betrayal, and the Great River, Nog has made a bunch of maneuvers.
That's right.
And he's doing all these barters and trades. And in one of those, he takes all of General Martok's blood wine and trades it. But he doesn't get anything back for it in time before Martok notices. And so Martok threatens him, and he tells him he likes his blood wine very young and very sweet. So we knew already that it was going to be a sweet wine. I just didn't know that it was going to be like this. So.
Good.
Yeah.
This recipe is great. They did a great job.
Again, this whole thing, holiday.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
Star Trek themed holiday dishes in there or drinks, because almost everything we've had, I could see having this at Christmas.
And it doesn't take long to prepare at all. I think this took me maybe 15 minutes. And that was more getting things together in the right amounts than anything else.
So, very impressive. Well done, Jonathan. Thank you, Jonathan.
So, Perry, before we sat down, you did tell us how, in the show, blood wine in the large gatherings, you have a good old, a mug.
Yeah, metal mug that you dip directly into the barrel.
Right.
And drink from. They do have their own flasks, but they're metal flasks that you have to cut open, and then you drink directly from that. But it's rarely ever poured in glasses, and I've never seen it featured in glasses like this. I will go ahead, for all of you diehard Klingon fans, I will apologize. Yes, we served our blood wine in this Cardassian Canar bottle. I was trying to find something to put it in. This is all I had at the time, so don't get mad. All right, I know the cultural significance. It was pretty, so that's what we did. All right.
So Klingon blood wine in a Cardassian Canar bottle.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
It looks like a unicorn's horn from my angle.
Yeah.
To kill the mood there a little bit.
I'm not gonna lie, every time you guys say Cardassian, I'm thinking Kardashian.
Don't.
I know.
You know, it's like
Eventually,
there's Kardashians in space.
Yeah.
eventually, you finally make that split in your mind. I know exactly
Well,
what you're talking about.
For those of us who grew up with the show, there were Kardashians before there were Kardashians.
Yes.
So we don't have that issue. All right. We'll save that and say that's a mark of your youth there that you would confuse the two at all. So in fact, that was like a running joke when the Kardashians got like were on their rise up. There, I kept seeing the meme pop up. The only Kardashians I'm concerned with, and it'd be a picture of DeMar and Ducat running around. You know, so it was great. I love that. So but we may do some Kardashian. Like if we decide to do this ever again, we may do some Kardashian foods, and then it'll give us time to actually order some of the stuff from the site that we can use as well. Back to this though. This tasted great. So in fact, I'm gonna have a little more.
Can we purchase a barrel? Because I actually really want to do that now.
It would be a lot of fun.
To do the
Yeah.
I really want to dunk.
There's a whole episode where like this giant party kind of going on. It's a graduation type scenario where the emperor of the Klingons is promoting people, and so they got barrels all over the place. And our main cast is disguised as the Klingons, and they are waiting for something to happen, and so they have to keep going back for more and more.
It's an endurance test.
Yeah.
So it's as much as it's a party, it's also an endurance test. Can you drink and party and stay on your feet? And if you pass out, you don't get inducted in the ceremony. They drag you out, so you lose your spot. So it's
like a fun society.
Yeah. So and the whole time they're partying, they're drinking, they're wrestling, there's fighting going on, there's all kinds of things going on, and it's supposed to go on for like 12 hours. It's just nonstop. Stay on your feet, drinking regalia there. So I don't know if I'd make it. I mean, it sounds like a great time. I just don't know if I'd be able to do it.
I'm always curious because I know we had a conversation before last time you were in here about the differences between obviously the newest movies and then the timeline that is run from the beginning. And it always fascinated me, even though I only had such little bit of Star Trek knowledge and experience when I was a kid, but I was always fascinated with the fact that the Klingons never really made an appearance into like the J.J. Abrams movies outside of that one scene.
That very brief scene.
In the second one.
Yeah, it's been debated as to whether or not those were actually Klingons or if they were like some kind of offshoot, whatever, because they don't really tell us anything about them. And because you're right, it's a very brief scene for all intents and purposes. But the Klingons have been a part of Star Trek since, again, the 60s. They have definitely had their look has changed over time. Back in the 60s, prosthetics and makeup and all that stuff was almost prohibitively expensive. And considering a lot of that budget went to Leonard Nimoy for the appearance of Spock, and anytime they did Vulcans, they really didn't have a whole lot to spare on other people that would be mainstays, things like that. So back then, they were just humans in really dark makeup and given like hair prosthetics, bushy beards, and whatever else. And it wasn't until Next Generation and the introduction of the character Worf that we saw the cranial ridges and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then of course, everybody griped, everybody complained, that's not what it's supposed to look like, whatever. They did try to explain it with mixed success. The show Enterprise really delves into what happened and why there were those Klingons that look like humans. Has to do with genetic manipulation and so forth.
Okay.
And then now we have that issue again when it comes to Discovery. Star Trek Discovery also changed the look of the Klingons quite significantly. Again, with mixed success, I'll say. I guess they were really going for trying to make them look truly alien, because Worf is successful because yes, he's a Klingon, but I guess he's one of the more appealing Klingons in his look. It's like, well, you should just really kind of give credit to Michael Dorn. He can't help it that he's still an attractive man underneath all the prosthetics, But they really did try to give them more of a truly alien look for Discovery, and a lot of it just didn't like it. So, and they kind of soft walked it back. But I don't know. Since then, they haven't really shown Klingons. Like Strange New Worlds hasn't featured Klingons yet. Lower Decks, which the animated show did, but they were using the same model as Worf. And then Prodigy, as far as I know, it never featured any Klingons either. So who knows? There is a new Star Trek show slated to come out here soon, probably the next year. Don't know if they're going to do anything with Klingons yet. So hopefully, if they do, they can kind of fix it.
I wonder if they've started to back away from it just because you can't really win, because it's almost like every generation will have their own Klingon interpretation,
Yeah.
depending on when they started.
Yeah.
It's an arguable point. Yeah. I will say, I've said this many times on the show, but the Klingons are actually in some ways my favorite part of kind of coming to enjoy Star Trek. So the quick story here is that Perry has been a fan of Star Trek all his life. I had never been a part of enjoying Star Trek at all, except for the movies like you had seen. And so when Perry decided to start the show, the idea was to be the expert, not to be the newbie. And I started by watching the TNG, or Next Generation show. And from that show here through Deep Space Nine, the one thing I've said consistently is the Klingons are the culture that I've most come to enjoy. And they start off as some alien. They're these warrior faction. They're always fighting. They're always kind of like they insist on being just always aggressive. But as you come to learn about this fictional species, they actually kind of they worked really hard to make a sense of this alien culture. And Worf being, of course, as you said, the character really epitomizes what that's supposed to look like while still being integrated with Starfleet. The Klingons are actually some of the most fun and unique parts of Star Trek, and why it's fun to watch, why it works. If you ever watching,
I think they're also the most recognizable too.
Oh yeah.
Even like many people that aren't don't watch Star Trek consistently, or myself, it's like I at least remember the Klingons. I remember what they looked like in Next Generation or Deep Space Nine.
Right.
Well, and that was the argument for why they should use the original look versus what Discovery did in changing them.
Yeah.
Because even people who aren't familiar with Star Trek, if you show them a picture, they're going to know at the very least that's a Klingon.
Yeah.
They're going to it
Might
might take
Star
them a
Trek.
minute,
Yeah.
but they'll know it as Star Trek, and it'll get them there. Versus the new design, probably not. And so when they were saying, the whole point of the change was to update the look and everything, it's like, but you're also trying to broaden your fan base. You're trying to bring in new fans. So why don't you give them something that they recognize? Because the show did change so many things. So it's just like, why would you do that? And I mean, I had to agree. Like, if you're trying to draw in new fans, I feel like you'd want to go with things that they would recognize, but would also make them curious to want to come in and see what you're doing with the thing they recognize. Too many things these days, I feel like when they're trying to revamp something or do a reboot or whatever, they have all this source material, all this lore to build off of, and then they just push it all to the side and make something totally different. I'm like, well, why did you even call it Star Trek? That's not Star Trek. You could have made that anything else. There's no reason to call it that. You're ruining the thing that you're saying you're basing off of.
Oh, I understand that when it comes to fiction and fantasy, because we could have an entire other podcast where I'd be the center ranting about the difference between Lord of the Rings and Rings of Power and all that stuff. So
I still haven't watched that yet.
don't even get me started with that. So.
Yeah, is there a particular, other than Lord of the Rings, is there a particular show or fiction?
So
series
my fan base is for myself. Lord of the Rings is my number one. Harry Potter growing up, because those are the ones that I grew up. Same grandmother that introduced me to Star Trek was also the one that got me into fantasy books such as Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, things like that. Even like the Wheel of Time series, Robert Jordan's.
Yeah.
And then I'm a big gamer.
Yeah.
So that's another thing is I love Elder Scrolls, Assassin's Creed, things like that. It's just kind of, I love anything that's got a broad, expansive universe that has also really, really fun history to it as well.
Are you a fan of Mass Effect? This guy just recently replayed.
I was for the first three. I haven't played
Andromeda.
since Andromeda, but I've played the first three, and I absolutely loved it.
I do too. I love that series. I think they did a fantastic job with it. I've been replaying it, and trying to just really hit all of the major points for the Paragon storyline, which is a lot harder to do than I realized. But yeah, I absolutely enjoyed that series. I tried to play Andromeda. It just didn't hit with the same, impact or feel. I don't know if it's just because it's the first game, because, the first Mass Effect game was also kind of slow and plodding. It took it a minute to get really going. So I don't know, but I know that they are doing another one, but it's supposed to be back in the Shepard timeline, just further down somewhere. So we'll see how that goes. We also follow, beyond Star Trek, we do the Expanse series, which we followed on Amazon. We've been reading the books now. We're on book 8, which we also talk about as a part of our show. For those of you who know, I'm a notoriously slow reader. David had just started the book, it seems like 2 days ago, and he's already finished with it. I've still got like 2 or 3 chapters left in the 8th book, so I'll get there. Is my whole point to that.
You guys into the other sci-fi series as well?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Expanse was probably the first, it was not even probably, it was the first one that we jumped into with our show, mainly because a lot of the writers from Star Trek worked on the Expanse series on Amazon. So it was just a natural progression to follow along there. And then they stopped after season 6 on the show, but the book is a 9-book series.
Oh, geez. Okay.
So we're now on book 8, finishing up book 8 to move into book 9. So we've just kind of been plodding along and hoping that they will pick the show back up. And
there is a time jump between book 6 and book 7. So if they stop the show, like they say they stopped it, but there is a in-universe explanation for why they might have a hiatus. So we're hoping that they'll come back at some point. It could very well make sense. So.
Well, at least when they're doing that instead of rushing it, to the end before any of the books
They
come
did
out.
do that. That is definitely true.
That was that whole Game of Thrones. You never know when George R. R. Martin will even finish those things. But it's like that's where that particular show started to go off the rails
when the book
by season 4, season 5, depending on whose character are involved.
Right. Yeah. So. The Expanse is definitely one, but Battlestar Galactica is a show that this guy loves and definitely has some Star Trek Deep Space Nine crossover.
In fact, the developer of the reboot Battlestar, the one that came out in 2004, Ron Moore, he originally wrote for Deep Space Nine. So a lot of the elements from Deep Space Nine he took and implemented on Battlestar, which at the time when I watched it, I felt like was probably the most complete, just absolutely best, well done sci-fi series that you could get. When Battlestar ended, I felt like every show I attempted to watch after that, for like the next 6 months, was just absolute garbage. Like I just remember turning them off. I was so frustrated with TV, having watched it. I just thought that show was that good. I still recommend it to people. In fact, when I graduated from college, I made every roommate that I had, we sat down and we watched it like multiple times. By the end of the summer, I think I'd seen the show like 6 times. Because I watched it every time. And every time someone new would come over, like, guess what we're doing today? You're going to watch this show. And I made everyone watch it. So I loved it. I still love it. Every so often I'll pull up an episode and watch it just because I think it holds up today. And if you haven't seen it, you definitely should go and watch it. So I don't know where it's available anymore.
Battlestar Galactica.
It's the reboot. So there was a series all the way back in the 70s. And then they revamped it and everything else. And I will give you the same warning that I got before watching the reboot. If you were a fan of the original series, do not watch the new one because you're not going to like it. If you're looking for anything remotely similar, it's not there. Beyond a couple of character names, it's just not there. But if you're open to it and that's not going to be something that necessarily bothers you, then watch it. You'll probably really enjoy it. But all you hardcore gatekeeping whatevers, you're not. So just go on somewhere.
I feel like that's with almost any series that spans the amount of time. Star Trek, I'm sure. My dad, big Star Trek fan, his favorite is the originals. I've seen some of it. And, I watched Wrath of Khan was the only movie that I saw of the original movies. I thought it was campy.
Yeah.
And obviously the Khan from there is a lot different than Benedict Cumberbatch's Khan.
That's true.
In the second movie.
I have a
Don't get him started.
particular gripe about Benedict in that role.
How long is this rant gonna go?
It's very simple. The original Khan was played extremely well by Ricardo Montalban. Don't give me your super Anglo whitewashed British Cumberbatch as a comparison to Ricardo freaking Montalban. You gotta do better than that. That's it. That's my gripe. I mean, all the best acting in the world is never going to overcome the glaringly obvious difference. And it wasn't just that he just happened to be Latino or whatever. It was a whole part of the character. The region from where Khan was from, all of that played into the fact that it was being played by Ricardo Montalban. So you lose all of that when you make it anyone else. So that's why it's particularly important. That's it.
I was going to say, doesn't the time breaking that Spock does, though, at the beginning of the first movie potentially change where he might come from? Almost like the butterfly effect?
No, it wouldn't. And not in my opinion, it didn't. Because even the development of the genetically modified individuals was specific to that particular region. So there was nothing that really should have changed.
Okay.
Yeah. They just were trying to capitalize on the rising popularity of Benedict Cumberbatch, which again, I get, but make him anyone else. You could have made him like some other corrupt captain who's gone rogue, or a CIA equivalent operative who's doing terrible things, and had a much better movie. But if you're going to sell me on a Khan story, you need to make sure the person sells Khan.
Yeah.
So that's it. Yeah. But I had the same kind of feel about the original series when I first watched it. But see, I did it out of order. I was a fan of The Next Generation at a very young age. I didn't even know about another series before then. And then my uncle bought me the VHS collection of the original series movies, the first 6 movies that they ever did.
Yeah.
And so he gave me these movies, and I was like, oh, it's Star Trek. And I popped in the first one, and it was a bunch of people I'd never seen before. I had no idea who any of these people. And I was like, what is this? This isn't Star Trek, you know? But I watched them anyway because it had the name, and I ended up really enjoying the movies. Wrath of Khan obviously being a favorite. Every fan who's ever seen it loves those movies. So then I knew the movies. And so then it was like, did you know they were also in their own show? And I was like, no, let me watch that. And I watched that, and I was like, this is terrible. Like, the movies are great. I don't know what this is over here. Same reaction. And then I had to just kind of work my way through it. And then once I did, I found, again, another level of appreciation for it as well. And I think that's kind of been my story with Trek in general. I will watch them, and then initially my reaction may be, you know what, this isn't that great. This isn't whatever. But then as I keep watching it, I find things to enjoy about it. So I've never felt like I fall into that category of a old school fan who gatekeeps or whatever, or, oh, that's not my Trek or whatever it is. Every time I watch one, I can find different things about them to enjoy.
And if I know anything about you, Perry, you gatekeep the gatekeepers.
Anytime, I do.
Anytime off screen, Perry has something to say about someone saying something about Star Trek, it's him gatekeeping the gatekeepers.
Yes, that's true. I have defended Discovery so many times because it pops up across the various message boards or other podcasts or whatever, and people just blast the show for being, so terrible or touchy-feely or whatever their gripe is about the show in that particular moment. And I feel like I have to constantly remind people that Star Trek has always been a reflection of the time in which it's being filmed. And so in order to appreciate what it is you're watching, you need to kind of give yourself a historical frame to then view the show through. And a lot of Discovery was about loss, turmoil, rapid change, which was all, COVID, terrorist attacks, like all that kind of stuff was kind of their framework there, and how to survive it, how to move beyond being PTSD'd or a victim or whatever, how to put your life together and move forward. That's what the show is about. So it's like, if you think of it that way, then a lot of the things make a lot of sense. And a lot of the ways the characters' reaction also make a lot of sense. How would you feel if your entire family was wiped out right in front of you, and then someone was like, get to work? You're going to have a reaction there. So that's what I end up kind of trying to remind people. But I feel like I just run into this massive wall of people aged 50 and above who are like, no, not going to accept it. No.
Yeah.
My captain's a bald British guy, and it'll always be a bald British guy.
With a French last name, the
Yeah.
French countryside.
Now, David, when did you start getting into the Star Trek stuff?
So when Perry was approached to do the Deep Space Nine podcast from Hollow Squid Media, that was about 4-ish years ago.
Okay.
And so I had watched those movies, the J.J. Abrams Kelvin timeline like you had, but I had never really watched Star Trek before that. My dad had watched the original show, but he had never passed that on to me. It was something that I had really ever gotten into. So before we started watching Deep Space Nine, which is the timelines crossover from TNG to Deep Space Nine about season 5.
They overlap.
Or 6.
They overlap by a year. Season 6 of Next Gen is when the first season of Deep Space Nine starts.
So
you
I
get 6 and 7. Those are the 2 years.
So I kind of blasted my way through TNG in order to be ready to watch Deep Space Nine. So we've been watching one episode of Deep Space Nine a week for about 3.5 years almost.
Okay.
We're on season 7, the last season of the show. We just finished episode 8, I believe, last week. So we have about another 18-ish more episodes to go, and we'll be done with Deep Space Nine. Voyager also had some crossover with Deep Space Nine about season.
I think it's actually like season 4.
Well, much earlier than.
Yeah, it's right before Worf joins.
Okay.
So season 3, season 4 is where they cross up.
Yeah, the character Worf originated on The Next Generation, and then he joins the cast of Deep Space Nine about halfway through that show. So he's actually, Michael Dorn has been in more episodes of Star Trek than any other actor. Even though he's not necessarily one of the, Picard is kind of like the main guy, and Sisko's kind of like the main guy, but you have, of course, the overall cast of each show, and Michael Dorn is like the guy.
That's true. He's been in more Star Trek than anyone. He was in the 6th Star Trek movie with Kirk and Spock and all that. He was in that movie as well.
As Worf?
He was Worf's ancestor. He was
that's
something.
Huh.
Like his grandfather or something like that.
Okay.
He was in, obviously, all of Next Generation, pops up in Deep Space Nine. He does some voice work later on, and then he pops back up in Star Trek Picard, obviously, again, as Worf. So, yeah, he currently holds the record as most appearances and just most work overall. He just eclipsed Major Barrett Roddenberry for her contribution, because she had been featured the most because she did a lot of voice work as well. Mm-hmm. So she was Nurse Chapel in the original series, and then she was in the pilot episode of Star Trek, the first pilot ever, as number 1. And then she was the computer voice in Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, and they brought her back for Picard, of course. But Worf officially eclipsed her. And now, thanks to the way that they do television shows, no one will ever be able to achieve this record. Like, the show would have to be on for like 20 years to eclipse his record.
Because most seasons back then were 24, 25, 26 episodes, and most shows these days maybe are 10. Yeah. That means you have like 2 to 3 times the amount in one season for one
There's a lot more to do shows nowadays. There's much more expectation on a lot of that stuff. Yeah, that's why half the time they all go to streaming. Just because there's a lot more money from the streaming companies.
100%.
To put all of them together.
Yeah, even Discovery, I think, wasn't that original for Paramount Plus's website? It was not. You didn't watch it.
That's true. When they launched Paramount Plus, it was supposed to be the pilot show to carry it, and then there were some issues when it came to access, and then it ended up going to CBS briefly, but then it did go back to being exclusive for Paramount Plus, but you could get it. It was like now tied into other platforms. So like, you could have an Amazon subscription, but then tie in your Paramount Plus and everything else. Yeah. So for a while there, you couldn't. It didn't matter if you had Amazon, Netflix, whatever. If you wanted to watch it, you had to have a Paramount Plus subscription.
Gotcha.
Well, all right, guys, I think that's really going to do it for us on this special episode. We went a little over on time, but as you guys know, that's not unusual for us to do.
Hour 15.
I will just want to reiterate again, if you are interested at all in any of the bought alcohols, liquors, things like that, go to Star Trek Wines. StarTrekSpirits.com. You can find all of them listed there. The cookbook that we got all the recipes out of that were featured today, you can order this on Amazon as well. It's just the official Star Trek cookbook. As you can see, it looks like this. Pick yourself up a copy and give it a try. Hopefully you can find some things to enjoy out of there as well. And last but not least, we do want to give a special shout out to the owners, my sister, of Wine Sensation, for allowing us to use their site to do this show today. We did try not to break anything, and you have to take it up to bed because that was
It was one glass.
Well, again, thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you all
And
next
Ben,
week.
where were you from again? What's your channel?
If you're looking for travel channel content on YouTube, Adventures of a Traveling Don. And gentlemen, thank you. I learned a lot. The food was fantastic.
Thanks for joining us. It's always
Thanks,
nice to
guys.
have a guest with us.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
That'll be it for us until next week, guys. Take care of yourselves.
Thanks, guys.
Peace out.